Hi students, in this video we're going to learn how to graph an equation by using a table of values, a table of points. So we'll come back to the equation from the last video. Y equals 7 minus 3x. The first step towards sketching the graph of this equation in using this method is to make a table of points on the graph. Later in the year, we'll learn some more methods for graphing equations like this. For example, we know that this equation is a line, and later we'll learn how to graph it just by that property. But for now, we'll make a table of values. So my table is going to have some x values, and then some y values, and then each of those will give me a point on the graph if I put them together. So for example, if I choose my x values to be -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3, basically what I'm doing is I'm saying if x is -1, what does y have to be to make the equation true? So to get this column, the essential question is if x is blah, fill in the blank, meaning something from this column, what does y need to be to make the equation true? And the strategy is just plug in the x value, plug in the number for x, so the number from the x column, and solve for y. So it's a lot like the example that we did in the last video. Given an equation, if we knew the y value was 4, we solved for x. When we make these tables, we're going in the other direction. We know the x value and we're solving for the other coordinate, the y. So when x is -1, I'm going to plug -1 into this equation and solve for y. So y will equal 7 minus 3 times -1, which is y equals 7 plus 3, so y equals 10. And now this tells us a point on our graph, -1, 10. I do the same thing here, so I'll plug in 0 for x, so y equals 7 minus 3 times 0. So in that case, y will equal 7. So 0, 7 is on my graph. When I plug in 1, I do y equals 7 minus 3 times 1, so that's 4. And I find that 1, 4 is a point on my graph. And same thing, so here I'll plug 2 in for x, and I end up with 1, so 2, 1 is a point. And when I plug in 3, my y value will end up being -2, so 3, -2 is a point on my graph. Now, I just chose a bunch of random x values. You can choose the x values to be whatever you like. I chose these because they're whole numbers. I included a negative number for good measure. I included 0 because it's easy to evaluate. So in general, you can choose these to be whatever you want, but it helps your cause if you choose things which are easy to plug into the equation. Step 2 toward graphing this is now going to be to plot each of these points. When I say plot, what I mean is to just graph each of these, put them on the coordinate plane. So looking at the very first point, I see that -1, 10 is a point on my graph, so I just put a point there. 0, 7 is another point on my graph. 1, 4, 2, 1, and 3, -2. So at this point, it looks just sort of like a scatter plot, but I'm trying to graph an equation, and these are just representative points on my equation. So I can actually connect them up, and since I know it's a line, I will connect them as a line. I guess this one was a little bit off. So that's the basic strategy. This is pretty much all there is to it. And I hope that this video is helpful. And again, we'll learn some more advanced strategies for graphing equations later.